Hey everyone, Ron Newcomb here, the indie coach. I am with my buddy Jerry Mosemak, longtime friend and artist, entrepreneur. We've done some joint ventures together, had a lot of fun, made a lot of mistakes, learned a lot. And so I wanted to go through again just some of the things that we've done together and through life, looking through the lens of a coach. And Jerry, one of the reasons why I picked a coach instead of a mentor is my daughter just had a volleyball game today. And, she has a coach on her team, of course, and he's in her life just for a season, just for a brief moment to hyper focus on volleyball. That's what he's there for, to get her better, to sharpen her, to try to help her get along. And then he'll be out of her life. And, we're indebted to coaches. And so it's a little bit different than a mentor. These little discussions are intended to be brief little discussions to insert in someone's life, and then for them to take little nuggets that they can take away and walk away with and apply. Most of the people that listen are generally artists, but are all artists, entrepreneurs, marketers. We're a little bit of everything, the independent artist. And so mostly, as you know, the lens is really seen through the filmmaker, but I have changed that and really kind of broadened it to be storyteller, just because I feel like there's so many facets and so many mediums that you and I
Yeah,
both have worked in now, where I don't want to get out of that, like games and books and
right.
comics and all kinds of stuff. I want to do it all. I just say I'm a storyteller. And I know you have a very interesting resume, have a lot of experience. Can
Mhm.
you tell us a little bit how you got started into the creative journey?
Yeah, absolutely. And I 100% agree. I feel like that I am a storyteller. That's what I am. These all the other things I do, which I'm going to get into here in a minute, are just all tools in the kit that I use as a storyteller. I didn't really come to realize that that was like, okay, that's what I am, a storyteller, right? Until really later in my career. I always identified myself as a designer, an illustrator, an artist, but the natural evolution, and I'll talk about that here in a second, but the natural evolution of a 30 plus year career in the creative industry is like it really is that to a storyteller, right? Call it filmmaker, whatever, but that so when I started, yeah, over 30 years ago. Well, my first design job was with Bass Pro Shops in Springfield, Missouri. I was putting catalog pages together and really was just itching to do some real design. I didn't see that as real design. It was, but I didn't see it that way. I want to do some real illustration. And then that job ended. It was a contract job. It ended. And Connie and I and our baby boy moved back out east to Northern Virginia, where we then would spend the next 25 years raising a family and career and all of that. And so it really it was tough. It was really tough as a young designer, as a young artist breaking in to the field. And so what I ended up doing was I went to a school to become certified as an IT specialist. I had a job with Xerox lined up, and I was getting ready to come out of school and go into this IT field. Very, very, left brain function field. And here I'm just this absolute right brainer, but I was willing to do it, right? And then I got a call from a friend, a syndicated political cartoonist who had a contact at a newspaper, Potomac News, little 30,000 circulation in Woodbridge, which is where you grew up, I believe,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Woodbridge.
Yep.
And so um, he said, are you still interested in doing your art? And I was like, man, more than ever. All right. And I had built a microprocessor and done all this stuff, right? That had prepared me for this other line of work. And then so Dick was able to Dick Wrights, the syndicated political cartoonist friend of mine. He was able to get me in front of the team there at the Potomac News, and they hired me based on my portfolio. He didn't like slip them a 20 or anything like that. I did the work in my portfolio to get in the door and or get the seat. And so for 4 years, I worked at the Potomac News doing primarily illustration and infographics work. And I had done some work, as I mentioned, at Bass Pro Shops and Quark Express and on the Mac, so I had some familiarity with it. But this was back when we were still cutting color and things that I'm sure a lot of people listening to this podcast have no idea what that means. But it's like X-Acto knives and waxing broadsheets on a board, and you had to put these layers of color.
Wow.
So not to get too far into the weeds, but anyway, I started there. I started deconstructing, basically reverse engineering these graphics that the Associated Press would send out, and just so I could see how they were making them, how they were putting them together. And then I kind of taught myself how to build graphics within the freehand application, which is now Adobe Illustrator. It was freehand at the time. Adobe bought freehand. It's like Macromedia, I believe, was the company. And so I ended up at my 4th year there. I won first place in illustration in the state of Virginia, and a position opened up at USA Today. It was very competitive. I was told they had something like 10,000 applicants for this position. And God is good, and I was able to go in and I guess impress them enough that they gave me a job on the team. And I was very thankful to God, because I was working 2 jobs. When I was working at the Potomac News, I was making very little money, and I had to work with a family. We were having kids, and with a growing family, I had to work 2 jobs. I had to leave there, and then I would go and work a job cleaning at night. And so just getting the job at USA Today, I was able to get down to one job. So it's kind of nice. I made more money in that one job than I did doing those 2 jobs. So it was pretty sweet. Game changer. I was in print for 4 years. Went to .com after 4 years. One of the best career moves I think that I could have made. A lot of people were telling me, "Oh no, it's a bubble. It's going to burst." And if you remember, the .com bubble did kind of burst, but fortunately, I was with an organization like USA Today where we were able to weather it. We were able to continue to put resources into building out that business model. I think they were forward enough thinking to realize print advertising shrinking, the print models eventually at some point it's going away, maybe not completely, but it's not going to be what it was. And so .com was great. Through .com, I started doing interactive informational graphics for the website, for mobile, for our social media. Started doing a lot of animation, and then these comprehensive long form story pieces. My last 6 years there, I was promoted to an art director in the newsroom. So I led a team in the newsroom producing infographics, everything from investigative journalism pieces to sports pieces, or one of my favorites, I would take a small team out to San Diego every year to Comic-Con International in San Diego, and it was just a blast. We worked hard, but it was also a lot of fun. And we were able to interview uh, folks like George R.R. Martin, Game of Thrones, Jim Lee, who's just a stellar, a legend of an illustrator in the comic book world, as well as Stan Lee. Everybody knows who Stan Lee is with Marvel. And Robert Rodriguez. I could go on. Adam West, but it was a great assignment. We had a lot of fun doing that. And then as you know, Ron, in 2015, let's step it back a little bit before 2015, because you approached me about helping art directing a film project that you were working on, The Rangers. And
Yeah.
I said, yeah, I would love to. I said, I actually would like to come in as an executive producer. We agreed, we
Yep.
did our thing. We got it launched and going. And with I think a great team, we were able to put together, a film that I think
Yep.
we're we're proud of in the of what we produced, right? I know
Yeah.
you and I we recognize the challenge of actually producing a film and getting it out there.
Yeah.
We learned a lot. We made mistakes, as you mentioned, but we got it out there. And I think that was the point where I realized, even though I'd been working in journalism and bringing these long form story pieces together, working with teams to produce a long form story that has video, infographics, interactive graphics, animation all through it as you're going through this sort of immersive experience. So I was a storyteller then, and I did start
Yeah.
to realize I was a storyteller, but it was really when we started making films together that I realized, wow, this is kind of like the next level of art. That was kind of the pinnacle of art to me. And it was because I think that I saw all the different pieces involved. There's illustration involved. There's design involved. There's, cinematography and lighting and makeup and costuming and props and practical effects, visual CG effects, VFX, and and so you had already been long bitten by the film bug, but that was at the point where
Yep.
I got bit by the film bug, and then was like, okay. And then as you know, we were rolling, and I think just out there having fun. We were,
Yeah.
on our vacation time, our weekends out producing, made some fun shorts and things. And I think a lot of it was experimental too, right? We were figuring
Yeah.
out how to do what and what we could do. The networking was fantastic. I think an important part of it, and I'm sure we'll get into, but just that ability to network and have those connections with people, because of course it's a team, right? It's a team sport. And and then of course together we ended up launching the Forge
Yep.
Studios, and I did a lot of came on as the creative director there, and left my job in 2015 at USA Today to do that full time because we had funding for the studio. And yeah, from there we went on for about a year together before we went off to do our own thing. And then in that I was also opening a coffee house with some friends at that time. And so we kind of, Connie and I, my wife, we poured ourselves into the coffee house and continued to work on our creative business, building our creative business off the ground. And and then from there we moved to Kansas City, where we were for the past uh, 7 years. We've been back in Virginia for a year. But while in Kansas City, I had the opportunity of, while I was doing my side hustle, right, running my business on the side, I was able to work for a couple of affluent churches. One of them was the largest United Methodist church in the country. I had
Hmm.
a team of 26 people. I had a design team, a video team, and a tech team. And so again, I was just continuing, or I have been continuing to learn and grow in these areas. There's a production level. This church, it produces a Christmas special that USA Today, ranked as one of the top 10 things to do during Christmas,
Wow.
and here we
Wow.
were in Kansas City. But it's quite a production. Millions of dollars in budget. They're going into, lights, camera, and action for what we were producing basically every Sunday. And then we left Kansas City, came back to Northern Virginia to be near our kids and our granddaughters who are growing up here. And we are now running KCDC Creative. We've been active, reactive, doing our own thing. When I was working for the church in Kansas City, they didn't want me doing anything else. So that kind of put a break on any side work. Wasn't so when after I left, there wasn't a non-compete or anything like that. And so I was able to reboot our creative business, KCDC Creative, and we do everything from animation, creative branding, brand strategy, creative marketing resources. Yeah, you pretty much name it, video, photo. And while the business officially is Connie and I, it's KCDC, right? She's from the Kansas City area. I'm from the DC area. And that's where we have our two networks and where we tend to do a lot of work, even though some of our clients, like Meta, are in California or Atlanta. We've done work for folks all over the country, but we're 1 year back at that, back up and running as KCDC Creative, and yeah, it's been going well. I do have a full-time job right now. I'm working. They were a contract for us. It was an energy association, NRECA. It's National Rural Electric Cooperatives Association. It's a lobbyist firm. It's an advocacy group. So I was doing some contract work for them, and it turned into a full-time gig that was kind of hard to say no to, so I took it. So now I spend some time up on the Hill, in hearings, producing, working with the communications team on producing video, photo, animation, really, again, all of the things we do as KCDC Creative, except I'm doing it now for them full time. And had some fun assignments there too. Do a lot of traveling. I've been was all over the country last summer. Hit Pittsburgh, Michigan, all over Michigan, down to Louisiana, San Antonio, and yeah, it's been a fun run. I got to shoot a Josh Turner concert at one of our events.
Cool. Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a good place to land coming back to Northern Virginia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you were
So I
missed.
know
So
that's a lot, man. So sorry
yeah.
for taking up the entire podcast
No,
time.
it's great. I think people need to know though, and also to get your background, but then also people see themselves in a journey like that. And
Yeah.
particularly when you're young and you're looking out and you're trying to find your path, particularly a creative, it's very few people that can have a linear path to say this is kind of how I did it. And you might be able to emulate me and here, let's go for it. Um, you're obviously so you're currently at the electric co-op. You are doing KCDC as well,
Yes.
and you're obviously not a one-man show. You mentioned your wife Connie, who also helps with marketing and things of that nature, I believe. And
Yeah, administrative side of the
yeah,
business. She handles a lot of the communications, billing and that sort of
yeah,
thing. So it frees me up. And I did mention, to your point, I don't know that I closed the loop on it completely. It's the two of us, but we do also contract out a lot. Again, as I
yeah,
mentioned, when it comes to depending on the level of the film, for instance, it could be, 5 people, could be 20 people. It just depends on the scope, the size, and
yeah,
what's needed. And so we work with our network and with people. In fact, we have a shoot out in Kansas City coming up the 31st, and I'm kind of on the fence. Am I even going to go? I have a good team out there that I might just deploy and have them go get it done. And but
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no, it's nice to be able to do that. Like you said, you kind of have two home bases that you can work out of. Just like in life, filmmaking is not a solo sport. So filmmaking is something that you do and offer video resources, marketing, and all that. And you have a lot of experience that you kind of laid out and explained there. How do you see the industry of film and video and as storytellers? Let's keep it broad. How do you see the industry of storytelling evolving at this time in the macro and the micro? Any thoughts on how do you see the industry evolving?
yeah. Well, I think the big obvious is AI right now, right? It's the AI tools that are coming online. I'm not sure that they are complete, that they're there yet. I would say they're in their infancy, right? I think we're beyond the infancy stage of AI. It's more like we've got a teenager, but as you know, teenagers still have a lot of learning to do, and that's what these AI tools are doing, is they are still learning. And as they're learning and they're developing and they're getting better, The programming's getting better. I think we're going to really see, um, and I'll take I would say on both the macro and the micro level, big changes because of AI when it comes to film. And in
No,
that, it's already you can see as a writer, I'm sure you know you've messed around with ChatGPT or some of the others, and it tends to really speed up the process. It's not like ChatGPT is going to write me a story, and it's really no longer my IP.
right.
Google now owns that, or whoever owns it,
Yeah.
right? Open AI. It's still what I found is I threw some stuff in there as I was just like, really exploring, playing around with it. I threw like some concepts in there, and I realized, well, no, this is still my AI. And as I kept shaping it, it really became more and more my I'm sorry, my IP. I said AI, my IP, But what it did was it wrote it all out for me, and then I could go in and make edits and changes and tweaks here and there as I needed to. So that's just one example of, I think, how that's going to change the game. Now, I think when you start to get into the visual effects, and just some of the I just saw, on YouTube. I'm on YouTube watching some of these AI videos all the time, and I just saw this one that was like this amazing retro Star Wars trailer that I was
Yeah,
just
I was
like,
going to mention those. Those are
yeah,
fantastic. They've done Lord of the Rings and yeah,
yeah, yeah,
and
they
it looks
are
just like the
fantastic. We
Disney.
should probably call one up for the
Yeah.
pod here, just so people can see it. But yeah, they're high level. They're just really, really well done. Um, Even though you can see there's some of those imperfections in
Yeah.
there. And I think as AI again evolves and
Yeah.
becomes better, I think that it's going to really revolutionize filmmaking in those ways. And there's
Yeah.
really already some incredible, I think, filmmaking being done out there using AI tools.
Well,
Uh,
that's what's interesting is that we're having a conversation as a community, I think, of artists, and there really is kind of two camps that I have found. And unfortunately, the one camp is extremely vocal and hostile. And it's the camp of it's gonna take my job. And people are fearful and they're reacting in fear and they're the loudest. And so it's shut down the conversation where people would rather not have that conversation because they don't want to hurt people's feelings. They don't want them to lose their job. And maybe they're right. And so these people are very cautious about going into AI and embracing it. And yet secretly, I found there's a lot of us that are behind closed doors, like checking it out and loving it. And ironically, you've also been using AI a lot and
yeah.
you might not even realize that
Well,
that
it,
counts as AI.
here's the thing. Is yeah, you're 100% right. AI may or may not take some jobs away. I'm not going to predict it is or it's not going to. Heck, I mean, it could Skynet on us, right? It could
Right.
it could decide we're useless, and it can do better without us, and all of a sudden there we're gone. I do think there are some dystopic views out there, and I think that wisely, you have folks like Elon Musk who will come along and say we need to slow our roll here. We need to exercise caution, and I would agree with that. I think we have to be careful with it,
Right.
because in a way, it is the next revolution in technology. It's going to change the way we work for sure. It will change our workflow, the way that our smartphones have changed the way we interact with our phone and communicate. And this is it. This is the next, this is like the computer,
Yeah.
the personal computer. This is the next big wave in technology, and it will change the way we work. So that's where I would say to people, start learning how to use these tools now because okay, maybe there is no more need for a junior or a entry level designer. But what about an art director, somebody who can use these tools and produce? I think those jobs will be there. I just think those jobs are going to change. So that's my prediction after I said I wasn't going to make a prediction.
You made one. You made one. So
I think the jobs will be there. I do think that it is, like I said, it's going to change the way we work. So we need to learn how to use it. I do think on the level of, where you have the developers and the techno garks who are driving this and building this, that I do agree with guys like Elon who say, we need to exercise caution here. We need to think about what we're doing. We need to be smart about it before we create, something that we soon lose the handle on, right?
yeah, no,
I think that's real too.
yeah, that is real, without a doubt. I mean, I think anybody that's really looked into it sees the cautionary tale there. And I think Skynet is the obvious funny, but like, oh, well, that could actually be. And, what's out to us in the public is one thing. Like, let's say Chat GPT 4.0, what they're testing and having beta is way down the road. They're already way further past than you think. And what people that are not sure exactly what is AI really is data sets, data endpoints that the computer takes in data and then it creates it and spits it back in a humanized format. And the more human it can feel, the more AI it becomes, the more intelligent it becomes. And that's why it needs data sets to feed itself and get better. And this is what I've heard, and I think this is spot on, is that you probably won't lose your job to AI, but you will lose your job to a professional that uses and knows AI.
Yes.
So you better be the professional that knows and uses AI.
And I think that's what I was saying about, well,
Yes.
there may not be the need for a junior designer, right?
Right.
But the art director, yeah,
But the art director.
I would agree with that statement, 100%. I do think too that there will always be that demand for that custom art, right? That's made by humans that has the that human touch, right?
Yeah. A
I
soul,
think,
if you will. There's a soul in it, and you can feel that.
yeah,
You can
yeah,
sense that. There's
yeah,
a human element that we all know when we see AI. And I
right.
don't know that the AI is going to give it life. It's not going to birth life. And only a human, in my mind, and you and I share the same faith. So that's, God through us,
Mhm.
can do that. And it's not going to be through AI. Now, maybe it might, and I'm like, wow, okay. But, and it gets to a point where it's hard to tell. But let me give you an example, Jerry, and tell me, where do you see this? So I'm not very good at grammar, but I consider myself a storyteller, and I write all the time, regardless that I know that I'm not great at it, but
But
I
Chat
love telling stories.
GPT is beautiful, man.
Well, that's what
That's like
so is this
cleans
it?
up all my run-on
Exactly.
sentences and
Right. I
yeah,
got all this red underneath. And my question is like, is it really wrong of me to take my story and put it into Chat GPT? Chat GPT then not only corrects all the grammar, but also can help me correct other, even small story points. But
is
I'm
it
the one that fed it. I'm the
right?
one that it's still my story. I don't see that as wrong.
And I know they're two different things, but I mean, is it wrong to run spell
Right.
check?
Exactly.
You know,
Absolutely not.
that's how I see it. Again, it's a tool. It's a tool that's evolved from running spell check,
Yeah.
right, on things or grammar. You might not want to say this way, and
Yeah.
I'm like, no, that's how I want to say
Yeah, exactly. That's the way I
it,
talk.
and but it's a valid question. It's a good question, and maybe not everybody agrees, but honestly, like I said, I still see it as it's still my IP. It's still my idea that I put
Exactly.
in. The tool is just helping me refine that. And now I'm, my time has increased. So now I can do more, right? So now
Exactly.
and it is a case of, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah. exactly.
if you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out, right?
Yeah.
An interesting thing that I heard, we had a futurist, which sounds like an oracle or fortune teller or something like that, speaking at one of our events, but it's not. He stays up on the trends and technology and is very knowledgeable of those things and these things. And so, but he was he was talking about oh, dude, I just lost my train of thought for a second on that. So
That's all right. The futurist, the thinking through things, Chat GPT,
yeah.
AI
Yeah, what
tools.
was it was an excellent point he was making. So he was the one who was talking about, this whole this is the next great revolution, and talking about, how actually he was predicting that it's not the junior low level, say, designer or writer who's in jeopardy. It's the higher decision level. And he is pointing at a room of executives and saying, this is coming for your jobs, not theirs. Don't get that wrong. So I don't know if that's real or not. And I don't even think that's the point that I was making at that moment, but it'll come
but it can,
back to me in
but
our
it can, yeah,
conversation
when it
about
pops
this, I'm
up,
sure.
yeah,
So
when it
sorry
comes,
about that. Yeah.
yeah, no, it happens. So let me ask you this: what you are, I don't want to use the word embracing AI. You're utilizing AI. In fact, like I said, many people have, and you and I have had some conversations around the tools. And there's tons of really cool tools. And if you're not aware of, they can make your life so much easier as a creative. What kind of resources are you using at this time? And if you could like maybe name some and give
Yeah,
us some.
well, and so to that point, I recently just led a webinar with um, with communications teams from electric rural cooperatives all over the country, and there were 115 communicators that attended this virtual webinar that I hosted out of our Arlington office. And really, these are tools that like Adobe, right? Firefly and Express, the AI tools that are now in Premiere Pro, a video editing suite, that are in Photoshop and Illustrator. Just some really neat things that it's made it very easy to do, but it's text prompts and so going in an example, for instance, and a lot of people they don't even know it's there unless they're actively exploring it, because they come in, they sit down, they do their job, and they do the job they did it last week, in the week before, and the year before, most of the time, right? Occasionally people are like, oh, and Adobe's now great at popping up like, hey, here's some new stuff, and you can do these quick little tutorials, and it'll show you some of those things. But we do get into that habit, right? We're creatures of habit. We tend to work this way. So as I was able to show them things like this in Premiere Pro, like this audio enhance. So we use it on the podcast we produce, the Along Those Lines podcast for NRECA. And if our if somebody on the call has a noisy room, or there's the sound quality is not great, we can run this enhanced AI feature in Premiere, and it cleans up that audio like magic. And if you've ever edited audio and tried to get noise or
Yeah.
a dirty
Oh,
piece of
it's
audio cleaned
killer.
up, you know how you've got to go into the waveform and find the peaking points, and just the torture that it was to do it before, and how much simpler now. It's a press of a button and a slider, you know and so the tools have gotten smarter, have gotten more sophisticated, have gotten better. So those are some of the things. So Adobe Creative Suite, we use Topaz. Topaz Video, in my opinion, is one of those things. I would say hold off, don't spend your money on that, because some of these do cost money. Topaz costs money. um, uh, the Topaz video thing, hold off on that. It's not there yet. They need to work on it. It takes way too long. You drop a video in, it takes way too long, and then you get it back, and it's like, yeah, that didn't really do much of what I needed it to do. Um, which is interesting because their photo tool, however, is excellent. It's great at really cleaning up photos. You also have, people don't really think about it, but Canva is an AI tool.
Yeah.
And I've started to incorporate that because there are certain things that, oh, that's what I want to do. This is how I'm going to do it. And I can do it within minutes here in Canva. Also, similar photo cleanup treatments, bringing some maybe soft photos into focus, cleaning up noise in photos. Say you shot something in low light and it's got a lot of noise in it. Maybe you brought your ISO up. And so you can have a very noisy image. It can help really clean that up as well. So Topaz is another great one. There's a Runway, which is another video editing one. There are some great ones out there. I actually have a list that I shared with that group, and what maybe we could do is I can send you that list if you
Yeah.
want, and
Awesome.
you can drop it in to the comment section or into the description on
Yeah.
the podcast, and people can go and check out some of these on their own. There are some good ones out there that really, again, will just, Mid-Journey is a great one for, illustration and creating images. One of my absolute favorites, and it's an Adobe product, but it's the Adobe AI model that is behind everything, all of their products, and it's Adobe Firefly. And it's pretty cool. It's free. It's online. You can go onto adobefirefly.com and start creating, and you can do 25 generations for free. Now, if you want, you can pay $5 a month, and then you can do, I think it's up to 100 generations. But if you are a designer, an artist, an editor, and you have the Creative Cloud suite, it's part of that. It's part of that now. I think they're going to change it. I think they're going to start charging for that. But it's actually a fantastic tool. And one of the things, and here's one of the things I think that's interesting that's going to come of this, that's really going to, again, help refine and speed things up. You remember how in Star Wars there was sort of this, as like a system of singularity, right? Like no
Yeah.
matter where R2D2 is, he can plug in
Yeah.
to that network, that system, and the coding language, whatever, he can make things happen by plugging in. And so there's sort of this unified system. I think you're going to see more of that as a result of AI. And how that's important to workflow and process and all of that is because now you'll start to see these sort of separate applications. And Adobe's been doing this for a long time. The whole idea behind After Effects, which is their animation software, is that you take your AI art, you take your Photoshop art, maybe you take some Flash or some video, and you bring it all together into After Effects, and you create a video from that. It could be an animation, whatever the style is. That's the idea. Well, you're going to start to see more and more of that as AI starts to, really, I think, bring that level of singularity, bring things together, bring the network, the system together. So it's going to be less proprietary, right? It's going to be a little more open source, I believe. I believe that's going to happen. I don't see how it doesn't, right? You already see it happening, like where now Adobe is taking that to the next level of where they'd already started doing that, as I mentioned, with like Express, right? I'm not Express with After Effects, but they're doing that now with Express. And that's kind of, Express is also another great tool. And what Adobe is kind of Adobe's answer to Canva, right? It's very similar. There are some differences, I'd say I use them both,
Yeah.
and if I can't do something in one, I'll bounce over to the other. But
That kind of thing of singularity, and you talked about things kind of Adobe already kind of doing that, where you take little pieces and pull together, and then that's your
mhm.
video element. How far, and we already talked about, and I will post in the show notes, there are some great trailers out there, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's all these cool movies that we love, like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. what if they were set in the 1950s? And
Yeah.
you can certainly tell it's AI, but AI nailed it to a point in its infancy. And you go, oh my gosh, I can see where we could take this.
Well, you
How
would
far
watch that
off?
movie,
I'd watch that.
right?
I would
I
watch
would
that for
watch that.
sure. I
I
would
would,
pay
it's
money.
like, yeah, I'm in.
I would pay money to see that. I think we all
Mhm.
would. How soon do you think, and this is a predict, let's just have fun. We'll throw it up on the calendar,
Sure.
see if you and I are right. How soon do you think we'll have our first 90-minute feature?
Oh,
100%.
it's right around the corner.
Yeah.
I think it's already being worked on. I
Oh,
think
definitely.
somebody out there is
Someone's trying to
already
do.
working on it. I just so I do listen. So I listen to podcasts. I don't have as much time to read as I would like. I do audiobooks because that way when I'm raking the leaves or whatever, I can put on an audiobook and I'm either
Yeah.
learning something or just enjoying a story. And podcasts have also, if you noticed, have made just a massive, who would have known
Yeah.
podcasts were going to come back as
No,
strong as
everybody's a DJ. Everybody's a talk show host.
yeah, and here we are. We're
Yeah, we're
now
doing it.
making a podcast, but I also listen to the Joe Rogan Experience.
Yeah.
Not everything. I tend to go through and find the people I want to listen to. So, for instance, like he just had Zack Snyder on. Now whatever you think about Zack
Oh,
Snyder,
dude,
filmmaker,
one of my top directors.
yeah, it's a storyteller.
Yeah.
Whatever you think, man. I mean, the guy, he's probably one of 20 people that can make a $300,000
Yes.
film.
Yeah. And you're right. People
300
will,
million, $300 million
yeah,
film, not $1,000 film.
yeah,
We can all
300.
make a $300,000 film, right? That's easy
Yeah.
money.
No, he's
Yeah.
one of the few people that can get a green light at the 300. And I think I mean, to me, I knew him coming in at 300. When he
Yeah.
did 300 and just blew my mind with the stylistic element. And ever since then, I've just been following his career path. And Rebel Moon, although it's not been getting
Yeah.
reviews, I thought story wise it's fine. I mean, I don't mind Rebel Moon. There's haters out there. I'm not saying it's the best.
I'm probably I'm a
You're
hater,
a
and
hater.
we could get into why. And it's probably because I really wanted to like Rebel Moon, and I
Yeah,
know what he was doing with it. He was going for that heavy metal thing, and
yeah,
growing up in the 80s and 70s and 80s, I would look, I was way too young for heavy metal, but
we
when I
watched it.
when I was old enough to like start buying them and
Yeah,
sneaking them into my bedroom, because I just loved the art and the stories.
yeah,
I mean, they were adult comics. It was graphic. I don't condone that, but he made this movie based on that genre, that heavy metal
yeah,
genre, and so I wanted to love it. And there were things about it visually. I mean,
yeah. I don't think you can
um,
complain visually. There's some cool moments. The sword was
yeah,
tight. I mean, the
yeah,
sword was tight.
yeah. But then there were some things I was just like, okay, well, whatever. We're not going
Yeah,
to pick. So the whole point I brought him up and brought that podcast up was because of 300.
yeah,
Because there was one scene of that movie that was shot outside.
yes, I did know that. Right.
So to get
I
that
think it was on
effect,
a
so he
stage.
looked at
Crazy.
yeah. So he looked at the graphic novel. The oh man,
Frank Miller.
yeah, Frank Miller. Thank you. Yeah, so he looked at the Frank Miller graphic novel and said, "I'm going to do this," and pulled it off. And so you now have this movie that has this look like nothing we'd seen before it, right? It just
Yes,
had this quality, this look, that if you try to do that now, you're just knocking him off, right?
I know exactly.
You're
He was the
just
pioneer. Yeah,
stealing it. He owns it now. And
yeah,
so I do think that's the kind of thing where you're going to see people pushing on AI for style like
yeah.
that, right?
I agree. And I do think it's going to help. What do you talked about some resources, you talked about what's working, and I appreciate you even bringing up some thoughts about what's not working. Where do you keep up with the latest AI information? What are some resources? You've mentioned podcasts, but what are some other areas?
Well, until I get my cyber chip implant, I rely on the internet. I
Yes.
I basically Go online. LinkedIn sometimes a good source, you know. Sometimes like say Fast Company, like I'll follow, organizations that I follow on social media will sometimes post, an article on AI. Um, YouTube's a great resource. There are a lot of people out there doing reviews on AI tools that you can go in and just say, hey, I'm looking for something specific. I'm looking for a good AI tool for animation, for instance. And
Yeah.
you put that in and you're going to get some hits. Also friends, you've sent me some articles. You and I have shared some information back and forth. I have a buddy I used to work with at USA Today, who is now the director of product design at Meta at Facebook,
Wow.
and he's shared some things with me. So sometimes it's people we know. It's working. It's like, hey, okay, I want to find this. When I was asked to do the webinar, of course, my knowledge base of AI just shot up because what did I
Of
do? I
course.
started studying AI. I
Of
started
course. No, if
looking
you
at
want to
it.
learn something, teach it.
Jump in. And yeah, so just started trying different tools, trying different things, finding what works, what doesn't.
Well,
Um,
I do have a guy on YouTube that I know I did send you, but I really like a lot. His name is Matt Wolf. Somebody else turned me on to him, a buddy Lee Love, but he has a cool site, futuretools.oi, and I'll put it in the site. It's basically, you can think of it this way. It's Google search for AI. So every technology he's trying to create a database for, and you can go on futuretools.io and just put in, film or video, and it will spit out 10 different applications
yeah,
that are
one of
AI.
the guys on YouTube, and I'm sorry I can't remember the guy's name on YouTube, but he actually reviewed that
Awesome.
yeah,
That site, that resource.
AI search resource.
Exactly. No, it's fantastic. And he's updating it all the time. And so people are like, well, isn't it always outdated? Well, no, this dude, like, daily, he's on it.
Yeah.
Hey, I would love for because I loved your art style. You and I have known each other a long time, but one of the very first things that we worked together on was I hired you to do some storyboards for my very first film.
Yeah.
And so I loved your art style. Always have been a fan of that. And I know you've been working on some cool stuff. You mentioned we did this fantasy episodic pilot that intended to be a series called The Rangers. And like you said, we know what it is and know what it isn't. I'm proud of the team and people. We filmed that in 9 days, which is pretty crazy. We barely slept any hours. We had someone offer land and a place for us to sleep. And so about 30 of us came in and just slept on
Yeah.
mattresses and floors and just got it done.
Yeah.
And
And it
we,
was, yeah, go
yeah, I was
ahead.
just going to say, we created this mythos in this world, and since the IP has expanded into a board game, a card game, a comic book, an actual live experiential event that I do every year called Weekend Warrior, the IP blew up. But one of the very first pieces that we did that I knew we needed to get down when I was trying to pull Jerry in, like, come join me, I said, hey, would you be willing to do a map? And so Jerry is, I kind of just put some thoughts down, but it is Jerry's brain that created the world of Adrassil. And I would love for you to kind of take us into what the world of Adrassil looked like in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, to your point, I just was going to reflect on how, yeah, we didn't really know what we didn't know going in, and I think that was some of the magic, some of the great stuff that came of that. And you're right, and that's like those 30 people, maybe not to a man, but I feel like if we did that again, like there's nothing we couldn't do. You know what I mean? Like if we pull
Yeah.
that type of that group, some of those same people, not all those same people together again and went back at it, like what couldn't we do?
Yeah. Totally agree.
Especially what we know now, where we've come since then. But yeah, let me share my screen real quick. And
Awesome.
all right. So are you seeing that? You seeing my
Got it.
screen
Yep.
there?
Got it.
All right. So this was the hand-drawn map of our world that we created. We had a lot of fun working on this, right? Because here we were, storytellers sitting around getting to dream up our own, world
Yeah.
that we could then uh, take a small part of and tell this little, like you said, this little story, this little pilot episode of what we had hoped to be a much bigger story, and maybe will be, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah,
this
done.
is just in Photoshop. Here I am in Photoshop. Here's the map that I hand drew.
Now
And so
this
what I did
can I just
was,
interject?
sure.
We actually had a previous generation, and maybe I'll put the copy up in the show notes as well. And that was smaller. And I asked Jerry, can you expound upon it? And he said, well, absolutely. You know, who doesn't want to do that? And so that top portion, the barrens up there, we wanted to kind of create a feel of there's more to the world. Like this is a photo or a snapshot of the world, but not the whole world. Very much trying to create a Game of Thrones, George R. R. Martin. Like there might be stuff beyond that you don't know of yet that we
Yeah.
could tap into in the IP. So this was like a third generation map at this point, and this nailed it and turned out phenomenal. And we do have a board game map that Jerry took this and then tapped that into. But anyways, I wanted to
Yeah.
set some.
Yeah. And so I drew this, and then based on this drawing, you're right. I started to hand paint for the board game a map so that everything was painted in, mountains, had some detail, lush green areas, lowlands, water, trees, all of that. And with my iPad Pro and my Apple Pencil, I spent days painting a board game size 300 DPI, which is a high resolution image map. And it took me days. And so I wanted to start playing around with AI, specifically Firefly. So I took this map that I drew and I took it into Firefly.
That is just
And
crazy.
what it was able to do is produce basically the land outlines, the water, the bodies of water, some trees and some things on here. But really, like if I just turn off some of these layers, I don't know if you see some of the layers and
Yeah.
things disappearing as I turn them off. But from there, I've taken it and I start laying in, start painting in, start drawing, start cutting, pasting, and bringing in images and just reworking it, right? Retooling it. So the artist is not out of the equation, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, to get to this point where I have it right now, I did this in one night. In
Yeah.
fact, I
That's
think, Ron, I
insane.
was sending you
Yeah.
art as I would develop it because I was getting so excited
Oh
about
my
it. I was
gosh.
like,
It's
man, this
amazing.
is looking cool. I
Yeah.
could totally see this working for, say, a board game or whatever.
Yeah.
Just,
An
you know,
animation, a video game, if there was a certain style.
wallpaper,
Yeah. Anything.
yeah. So for your desktop, but the point is, within a matter of hours, I was able to do something that previously had taken me days, and I'm really happy with where it's going. It's still not finished. I'm still working on it. I want to be able to, like we have here, I want to be able to put some of the names in. There are some additional locations I want to add, but overall, just really happy with the way this image had turned out. And basically, I dropped in this map and gave it some text prompts and told it what I wanted it to be. And one of the really cool things about it too is because I put fantasy in, if you just look up here in the right hand corner, how it just kind of took this area over here that I'm fine with, kind of like none of our stories really ever gotten out that far. Maybe someday
Yeah.
it will. I mean, and we'll fill that in, but it's just this sort of this like mystical. It's got the
Yeah.
little embers
I
and
like it.
and I was just like, that is so cool that it decided based on the term fantasy that I put in to
Yeah.
give it a little bit of this magical, mystical feel over here. There's a little bit of a haze on it, a little bit of a haze on things. So again, but I'm continuing to work on it. Again, it doesn't take the artist out of the equation, but it's again changing the way I'm working. And a big part of that is just the time that I'm spending on
Yeah.
it, how much I'm able to accomplish in the amount of time, right? So
I
like
love it.
I can't wait to like start doing cards and things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Exactly. No, I
so
mean, I think this is a
yeah,
complete game changer. I could see the use of this in like, yeah, 5 different ways. I know you can too. It's hard not to go down uh,
yeah,
the path of that. I have a saying that a film will fight you every step of the way. That's one of my
yeah.
sayings. It's our job as creatives, as producers, to pull it into existence. What are some of the hurdles that you've had to overcome throughout the years as a storyteller?
Well, I think, you know, not, I don't want to get into the budget and all of that. I mean, that's certainly one of those things, right? It's like if you have a lot of money, you can hire people. You know, if you have a $300 million budget, what can't you do,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That smooths out some of the hurdles. You know, it's everything from, I think, sometimes little things like we don't have something that we suddenly need because you have a vision, you have a storyboard and everything. And I know every director, every producer pretty much does this. You get out there and then it kind of takes on a life of its own. There are certain things that happen. There are some serendipitous moments. There are also those moments that come along that it doesn't matter. Every film I've ever shot, Mr. Murphy somehow shows up in some way. And so you always have those things. I would say the overcoming to that is just being resilient, being resourceful, and moving on, right? Pushing through, finishing. Don't get disheveled. Don't get disheartened. Don't get broken down, you know, by it. Keep going.
yeah.
Finish.
No, I completely agree with that. I think if anything, um, I would tell a filmmaker is you have to have tenacity to finish. So many well-intended filmmakers, and it's literally, I don't know if you know this, Jerry, but it's in the 80 upper 80 percentile of films that don't get finished.
Oh, I
You
believe
can
it.
you can go on my IMDb page and I have some films on there and it's like, where are these films? Unfortunately, I wasn't the lead on it and the film's wiped out. That's why it's very important to me that even though the Rangers is we know what it is and what it isn't, but we owed it to all those people that
Yeah.
worked on that to get it out there. Regardless of what I felt at the end of it, it wasn't exactly what I wrote on the paper or what we had a team of writers. Jerry certainly contributed
Yeah.
to story a lot. It didn't always end up on the screen, but we owed it to those people to get it up there and we finished the daggone thing. And that's what I'm proud of. That's what I'm,
Yeah.
you know,
I think too, you know, in that sense of you know, cohesion, getting it done, working as a team, you know, it being a team sport. Well, there are teams that work well together and there are teams that don't. And you even see this places like in the NFL, professional sports, where you have one guy, you know, who's creating all this drama or problems on the team and it affects the overall all team. And so you can sometimes have that too. So I think just a big part of one of those things, you know, the it's the film fighting against itself, right? Part of it can be people, right? Personalities,
yeah.
you know, and so what I would say, you know, you've got a part of being a good director, producer, leader on a film set is, you know, building consensus, you know, being that leader who can bring the team together and find consensus. And sometimes that means you have to listen to somebody else and it may not be exactly what you were thinking, but you're going to try it a different way. And then sometimes it's like, well, guys, this is the way it's planned. You're going to have to trust me on this and we're going to have to go forward, you know. But those are, of course, you know, and you and I have done it enough to know that kind of stuff happens, right? It happens on film sets. And you know, and then of course there's always food. Make sure that you plan for the vegans on set, right?
Yeah.
Make sure that you have a salad or two
Yes.
on the lunch menu when you're feeding everybody, or
No,
you
you
have a
dietary considerations are definitely a big one.
dietary
There,
considerations. Yeah.
I don't talk about this probably often enough, but it is certainly something I've said in the past. And It's hard to say because I don't want people that have worked with me to think that they're in this camp. If you think I'm talking about you, it's probably not. Okay.
But it might
But
be.
it might be. If you got to own it, own it. If you got to own it, own it. Yeah, I believe in extreme ownership. If you haven't read that book, Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership,
Very good book. I
take
have
it.
read it. Yes.
It's awesome.
Very good book.
But every film I've ever been a part of, Jerry, every film, not every short, but every feature, there is a coup that happens. Everyone. And it's because I think you mentioned, people, personalities, dispositions, and everyone is a creative there. And everyone's out trying to optimize the creativity to create the best thing that we can make. And when they feel like it's not going in a certain direction, they start to lose heart or get upset. And then, like you said, if one person starts to be extremely negative, and it's a cancer, it starts to permeate amongst the crew.
Yeah, it can poison the pond for
It'll
sure.
poison it.
I don't like using toxic too much about when referring to people, but it does have um, that toxic characteristic when people start, they didn't get their way or they don't like it or they think it's not happening the way they would do it. And then they start grousing or, and then pulling somebody else into it, so yeah, I know what you mean though. I've been there for some of the coups. So
Yeah, no, you have been, and helped me work through it, because I do think that's what a great leader does, is that these people could have walked off, but we were able to
yeah.
collectively um, pull together people, remind them of the vision, remind them of the purpose and what we're doing. Because they were long days, hard days. For Rangers, it was in the middle of the summer.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, I've never been more alive. I've never felt more
Yeah.
awake. I got like 5-6 hours of sleep at best each night and was up first thing in the morning. It's one of the things I knew that you were one of the kindred spirits, is when you're rowing really hard in production, you look to your left and to your right and you see who's next to you. Those are your true teammates. The people that are behind you, no, it's the people to your left and to your right. And every time I got up at like 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, you were there. My brothers were there. Betsy, Betsy Chapman, this
Yeah.
woman,
Kudos to Betsy.
yeah, she's
We
never,
need more Betsy's,
we
huh?
need more Betsy's. She never worked on a film or anything like that, came down there. And when these people started to be a little negative, she was so optimistic and fun. And just like, we're working on a fantasy film, guys. It doesn't get any better. And she was willing to do anything. She said the best time she had was when she played an orc and got killed by an arrow.
That's
And
right.
and then she got
Yeah.
to be an elven harp player because she plays the harp professionally.
Mhm.
So we need more Betsy's. Who are you a fan of creatively? Who are you a fan of? I know we mentioned Zack Snyder, but who are you?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm a big fan of as far as illustrators go, I'm a huge Frank Frazetta fan. He I think just set this level for fantasy illustration that
Oh
really
yeah.
defines a lot of illustration today in that genre. You also film wise, um, uh, Ridley Scott, Blade Runner is one of my top favorite films. Martin Scorsese is another. Raging Bull, Goodfellas, and James Cameron. Um, Aliens, the first one and only the first one.
Not
Oh
the
no, I'm
second?
sorry. I'm sorry. Aliens
Yeah.
1 and 2. I take that back. I take that back. It's Terminator. I was thinking
Oh, okay.
Terminator, only the first one for me. For me, I don't need the rest of them. They should have stopped after the first Terminator and never made another Terminator, in my opinion. But those guys, they have some meat out there, some really good storytelling, some really good I think genre defining films.
Oh yeah. No,
Um,
they're all great choices.
yeah, yeah,
James Cameron, I mean, you can't hit the top selling film and then top it by doing it again. I mean, he did it with Titanic. I
yeah,
remember telling a buddy of mine, I was on the police department and I was like, you need to go see this movie Titanic. It was awesome. He's like, come on, dude, the boat sinks. I mean, this is
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about. And the next day he was like, dude,
Dude.
that
Yeah.
was like the best film I've ever seen. I've seen it 3 times. James Cameron is a master. What people don't give him credit enough for is he is a master storyteller.
Yeah.
Master storyteller. I mean, he took coming off Alien, the first one,
Yeah.
and us being like, holy cow, that was cool. And then he takes on Aliens.
Yes.
How do you level up
Yeah.
Alien? And he leveled it up, was
Yeah.
amazing. And I actually am one of the few people that agree with you. I think Terminator was by far the best. Everyone loved Terminator 2. I didn't dislike it, but it wasn't Terminator 1. I didn't need Arnold to be the hero.
And the kid bugged me,
The kid got you.
and so
Yeah.
sometimes, and that's an interesting point though. You can be a great storyteller and have this great vision, you know what I mean? And it's all freaking like, okay, this is going to be awesome. We've got the
Yeah.
budget, we've got the vision, and then you get out there and maybe the actor's not quite what it's acting is not quite what it should have been, and that's that. I'm not picking on the kid, you know what I mean? We have
Yeah.
cases of that where you can look at a film and you can say, man, yeah, the acting could have been up a better, and I
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
appreciated that film a lot
Yeah.
more.
No, I mean, one of the most famous, right, is Star Wars when they reset.
Yeah.
God knows they crucified that little kid, and uh,
Yeah, right,
he
right.
ended up.
And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not picking on
No, absolutely.
actors.
I
They've
agree with
got
you.
they
It was a
all
hard
over.
thing to
Yeah.
fill, and you're a little kid. You of course, who doesn't want to do like a movie at that age? And I think he
Yeah.
would even confess because after that he had a hard go at it. I mean,
Yeah. What really does bug me in these movies is where they you're supposed to be getting to know the character and like the character. And I know there's this whole kind of, it's not really a show. I mean, it's been around since Han Solo, maybe even before, but this sort of anti-hero character, right? And they try to develop these characters to be complex, but you really just kind of end up disliking the character,
yeah,
and that's not the goal. And
no,
so that bothers me in some of the storytelling. And all these guys have done it, and again, I'm not going to pick on them. They're masters,
yeah.
I'm not, tearing up their work. I
No,
would
it's
love
it's
to.
it's no, their stuff's out there. We get to
Right.
running quarterback because they put it out there, and we're trying to
Yeah.
learn from it. If I don't
Yeah.
break it down and learn from it, then I'm just an admirer, and I want to be more than that. I want to be a student.
Right. Right. And while it is exactly, and while I don't necessarily want to be a critic, I do want to be a student, right? I
Right.
want to
Exactly.
learn from it. I want to see better, right? I want
Yeah.
to see like this high level of storytelling. And those shows are out there too. In fact, I'm watching Shogun tonight. I haven't seen it yet, but
Dude,
I
let
kind
me
of can't wait to
probably
to
the prettiest
watch it.
series I've ever seen. Have you seen any of it?
I've only seen some
Just like
clips, just
trailers?
like, yeah, shots and
Did you
trailers. Yep.
watch the 80s miniseries?
Hmm.
I love that.
And I read the book, which is a
And you read the book.
great
Okay.
book. Yeah.
So even before they announced the series was going to be made, I loved the 80s version so much. And I was talking about it one day to my wife. This was 10, 15 years ago. That immediately I went on eBay and bought the DVD. And so she sat down with me and she was like, I'll give it a shot. And she ended up
Yeah.
watching the whole thing with me. The series, this is no spoiler. The only thing I just want to say, the prettiest series I think I've ever seen. Every shot could have been a painting. Who
Wow.
the cinematographer, the lighting, the wardrobe. I mean, everybody was at an optimal level. I'm interested after you're done with everything. We should
Yeah.
like debrief because there's one powerful scene, and I just would love to get your thoughts on it. But every frame was just at an optimal level.
Yeah. And that's where you got to give it to like the DP, right? And
Yes,
the art director and the creative side. It's like when
100%.
you're watching a movie like that or a show, or whatever, you're watching something and you pause it for a minute and you get up and you walk away and you come back and it's like
Yeah, like that
that
could be on my
shot
wall.
frozen right there on the
Yes,
TV is a piece of art.
is an art.
Yeah.
Piece of art, no doubt. And the first episode, you're going to get an amazing shot. Anyways, we should debrief because I don't want to spoil it because
Right.
you're going to
Yeah.
watch the magic. What
Well,
has
and we might be stretching it for your audience here. We've been talking for a
we have
while,
we
but
have we have
but
we've
it's
been
your
going.
show, it's your
No,
podcast,
we've
Ron.
been
Roll.
we've been going. What's some of the things that's made it possible for you to succeed?
Um, of course, a great wife and family behind me. But I think um, strong work ethic, grind. I think not being afraid to get after it. A belief that um there's really not anything I can't do in this space. Yeah, it might be my first painting or my first illustration at a newspaper, and I don't have this illusion that it's going to be, a Frazetta masterpiece or something like that. But okay, I know I can do a good job for where I am now, always working to get better, right? Always leaning into growth, always trying to push myself to be better, to learn, to improve. And when I was doing that, when I was primarily in print at USA Today, I could look back at my illustration work at the beginning of the year and the end of the year, and I could just see this just huge leap.
Yeah, you were better.
Yeah. So I think that's part of it. Of course, my faith, I have to give credit to God, to my Heavenly Father for, providence and the doors that opened when they did, and those opportunities. Um, I know that might be hard for somebody who's young, who's starting out or trying, and they're feeling like a little discouraged. But I will say this: when I started out, I was discouraged too. I felt very discouraged. I had a contract job at Bass Pro Shops that ended, and then I was waiting tables. And I'm waiting tables at an Olive Garden, and the people I used to work with at both Bass Pro Shops come in for lunch, and I'm waiting on them. And they're going, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, my contract ended, bro. I'm trying, yeah,
Yeah.
I'd love to go work somewhere else, but it was an uphill climb to the point where I was like, okay, I have a family to support. I need to get a career in place. And I started to go down this IT track, you know.
Yeah.
I'm, not knocking IT, but I'm
That's not
thankful.
what, that wasn't your calling. It's not why you're put
Right.
on this earth.
And
And
I'm eternally thankful to God for making a path to the creative field that I ended up doing well, thriving in. I think also don't be so attached to your art, because if you're working for a client, if you're working for a company, an organization, and they're paying you, be able to take art direction, be able to take direction. You may not agree. You may not agree. It's a good chance you were really happy with what you produced and you think it's there. I can I can't tell you how many times I felt that way, right?
mhm.
But you have to learn how to take art direction, or you're not going to make it in that field. You have to be able to kind of give birth
Yeah.
and then give the baby away, if you will,
Absolutely.
to the people who paid you
Exactly.
to
No, and
create
it's
the
that.
art. It's
Exactly.
not yours. It's not yours, and you have to realize that. Um,
Exactly. And
and
same with the
yeah,
people that try to hold on to it the tightest. When you're making a film in particular, it is a collaborative medium and you can't hold it too tightly. It's everyone's. It has to be the creative execution and vision of the director, but you're all supporting that. And like you said earlier, I allow people to kind of argue their point like three times. And then at that point, we got to move on, because now
yeah.
it's going to start to cost us money and
Well,
it,
and I know this because we've spent enough time on film sets, and hopefully we'll again here in the
yeah,
future. But you really can't have that. You really can't have, when you're in the process of production, everybody coming at you with their ideas of
yeah,
what they think and how it should be shot.
right.
Now, there is that point where you have to empower your DP to go get the shot and things like that.
Right.
But if everybody's coming and like, man, this should happen this way and that should happen that way,
Yeah.
it actually jeopardizes the
It takes
mission. It
away. It
actually
does.
it's potentially, prevents you from accomplishing what you set out to do. And you
It definitely.
have a limited amount of time, a limited amount of resources,
Yep.
and it might be daylight. You might be burning daylight,
And
and
likely are. Yeah.
yeah.
You said
So,
you're a reader, you like books, podcasts. Do you have any that you would recommend? Any books or podcasts?
yeah. So there is um, so if you've never read Story Brand, I recommend you read Story Brand.
David
Miller,
Miller.
yeah,
Phenomenal.
Dan
Phenomenal.
Miller. Story Brand, great book.
Great book.
Especially if if you want to run your own business, do your own thing. Whether it's working as a contractor or building something bigger. But the idea, the premise of the book is you are basically putting your client, your customer, at the center of the story as the hero, and so it really walks you through that how to it outlines a creative process, a creative workflow. I know that he has a whole marketing uh, brand behind it. I didn't really get too into that so much, but just what I took away from the book, I would
Oh, it's
highly
great.
recommend that book, especially to any creative getting started. It's going to really, hopefully, kind of shift your perspective to where when you're working with clients, you're able to do so effectively. A lot of artists can't work with clients. They don't understand why they can't retain a client, or they're always looking for their next client because they couldn't, make that client happy, or jobs go bad, jobs go sideways, and they don't know why.
Yeah.
It's a
Story Brand
must.
is a great one. He started out as a screenwriter. He was a wannabe
Yeah,
screenwriter. And so there's a lot of story applicable filmmaking elements. Actually, it's a basically a marketing entrepreneurial book,
yeah,
but there's a lot of grounded filmmaking story element, which is one of the reasons I loved it. And you walk away going, that dude was right. What
yeah,
he was preaching
yeah.
was right. How can people find you and support you?
Well, one more thing I would
Yeah.
recommend real quick if I could, and that is it's a podcast. And so I'm giving you a book and a podcast, but the podcast is it's The Future, Futur, with Chris Doe. And he has guests on who are, I mean, they're top in their field in the creative industry. They work for big companies. They have big jobs. Some of them have their own agencies. But these guys are real movers and shakers in the industry, in the field. And his whole goal, Chris Doe's whole goal and purpose of this podcast and his business. So he started his own agency in California called Blind, and then I believe he sold it. I don't think he's still with them anymore. He's doing The Future full time now. But it's about training and equipping creatives in their work, and the advice that he gives, the teaching, and the information and what you get from these conversations with other creatives is also another invaluable two must-haves. Those are two. There's a lot more I could go into, but or recommend, but those are two I think musts for creatives that want to do more, or maybe they want to do their own, or even if you're working for another organization or a company,
Yeah.
you're working in the corporate sector, it's still useful, very good information that's going to help you be successful in your
Yeah.
career.
No, I wasn't familiar with the future, so I'm definitely going to check that out. So yeah, how can people find and support you?
So I'm on social media. You can find me on social media, Jerry Mosemak. Um, uh, I'm on Behance. If you don't mind, Ryan, can I share my screen real
Yeah.
quick? And okay, so we've got let's see. So I do have a KCDC creative website, and here we got to see my cool little animation here pop up. So boom, boom.
Nice.
Right. So this one we've got some a video reel playing here, some video work that I've done, and then some of my projects and things here, and then about us and contact information. This is a cool, this was a piece, this is actually somebody else's film, but I worked on it with them in Kansas City. It was a sci-fi story. It was a lot of fun. And then this was a piece that we created in the coffee shop that actually my son wrote. And then again, you can see a lot of my graphic design illustration work here. I'm also on Behance. So if you go to Behance and look me up there, I have a website, portfolio website from there, as well as work on Behance. But from here, you can click into these and you can see if it'll load. It wasn't wanting to load up earlier. I think it might be my internet. So, but anyway, you get the idea. You
Yeah.
can go there. That's where you can find me, some of my work. Let's see if this, so yeah, so you can, it's not wanting to load. Yeah, but you can see I've got a lot of work in there. Um, but yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah, that's our Rangers board game there in the middle. That was fun.
Yeah, Rangers board game, a lot of magazine illustration work, magazine covers that I've done. And some video work, some music video work, some commercial video work. I've done quite a bit of commercial video work since striking out from the Forge.
Awesome.
Yeah, so when you're on the indie level and you're even if you're trying to make something small, you're inevitably pretty much dipping into your pockets to pay for things.
Yeah,
Even for low budget stuff. I think the lowest budget thing on my own that I produced was still $4,000,
exactly. No,
and so
you can spend
so
money fast doing film stuff.
yeah, yeah, you can. And so I kind of made a conscious shift until I had the right project come along that I wanted to spend not just money, but the energy, the
Yeah,
time
you can't tell
on.
every story. You do have a
Yeah,
finite number of stories you're going to be able to birth in this world. And I
yeah,
think about that a lot because I get a lot of stories, but
yeah,
I put it into a folder and ask myself, is this the one I should spend my time on?
yeah.
Well, also, man, it's been a great conversation. I
Yes, sir.
appreciate you all watching and listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And for God's sake, leave a comment so we know that you're out there. And I'm doing this more than just for the audience of two, but it does help the channel also. But I believe we're good to go to conclude our discussion with Jerry. So until next time, keep on swinging.
All right. Thanks, Ron.